Have you ever felt completely alone, cut off from the world, as if the universe itself pushed you into isolation? Maybe relationships faded, opportunities vanished, or you suddenly found yourself standing at the edge of your own life, wondering how you got there. But what if this loneliness isn't a punishment? What if it's something far more profound, a hidden invitation, a sacred pause designed just for you? Carl Jung, the pioneering psychologist, saw isolation not as abandonment, but as a necessary passage, one where the noise of the world falls away so you can finally hear your own soul. He believed that true transformation begins in solitude, where the unconscious mind rises to meet us, revealing buried truths and guiding us toward our destiny. This is where the magic happens, where individuation, the journey to becoming your authentic self, takes root, where synchronicity, meaningful coincidences, begins to whisper, and where the dark night of the soul, that painful but purposeful crisis, prepares you for rebirth. If you've been pulled away from the crowd, it's not an accident. The universe isolates you for a reason, and today we explore why. There comes a point in many people's lives when the external world seems to pull away. Friends drift, routines dissolve, and the usual distractions lose their grip. At first, this isolation can feel like abandonment, a cruel twist of fate leaving you stranded. But Carl Jung saw it differently. He called it necessary solitude, a sacred space where the self, stripped of its usual roles and masks, finally gets the chance to speak. This isn't mere loneliness, it's an invitation to go inward, to explore the depths of who you are when no one else is watching. Jung believed that true self-discovery doesn't happen in the crowd, but in the quiet moments when you're left alone with your own mind. And though it may feel uncomfortable, even painful, this isolation serves a vital purpose. It forces you to listen to the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. The ego, that part of us which constructs our identity and navigates the external world, thrives on control. It wants to keep things familiar, predictable, safe. But beneath its carefully managed surface lies the unconscious, the vast, uncharted territory of repressed memories, unacknowledged desires, and hidden fears. In the busyness of everyday life, we can ignore these deeper layers for years, even decades. Yet when isolation arrives, the distractions fall away, and suddenly, there's nowhere left to hide. The thoughts you've suppressed, the emotions you've buried, the aspects of yourself you've disowned, they all begin to surface. This is what Jung called shadow work, the uncomfortable but essential process of facing what we've kept in the dark. Jung famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." In other words, the parts of yourself you refuse to acknowledge don't disappear. They control you from behind the scenes, shaping your decisions, your relationships, even your suffering without your conscious awareness. Isolation strips away the illusion of control, forcing you to confront these hidden forces. Have you ever noticed how, in moments of solitude, old wounds resurface? Or how patterns you thought you'd outgrown suddenly repeat themselves? That's not coincidence, it's the unconscious demanding to be seen. The universe isolates you because growth requires reckoning. You can't heal what you won't face, and you can't become who you're meant to be while clinging to who you've been. This is why so many spiritual traditions speak of retreat, of wilderness, of withdrawal, because transformation happens in the void. The ego resists, of course. It will try to fill the silence with noise, to numb the discomfort with old habits, to convince you that you're wasting time unless you're producing, achieving, or pleasing others. But the soul knows better. It understands that this isolation is not emptiness, but preparation. Like a seed buried in darkness before it breaks through the soil, you are being remade in ways you can't yet see. The universe isn't punishing you, it's sparing you. Sparing you from living a life that isn't yours, from staying asleep when you were meant to wake up. The question isn't why you've been isolated, but what will you do with it? Will you resist, or will you listen? Isolation, in its deepest sense, is not merely the absence of others. It is the presence of something far more essential, The opportunity to encounter your true self, stripped of the expectations and influences that have shaped you. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the lifelong journey toward becoming who you were always meant to be, rather than who the world has told you to be. Society, family, and culture hand us scripts, roles to play, masks to wear, and for years, even decades, we may mistake these borrowed identities for our own. But when isolation arrives, when the noise of the outside world fades, those scripts lose their power. Suddenly, you are left with a simple but terrifying question. Who am I when no one is watching? This is the gift and the challenge of solitude. It dissolves the false layers, one by one, until only the essential remains. You begin to hear the voice you've drowned out for years, the one that knows what you truly want, what you truly value, what you no longer have the energy to pretend to be. Individuation is not about becoming perfect, but about becoming whole. It is the reconciliation of all parts of yourself, the light and the shadow, the strengths and the wounds, into something authentic, something unmistakably you. As this inner work unfolds, something curious begins to happen. The universe, once silent, starts to speak in a language of symbols and coincidences. Jung called this phenomenon synchronicity, meaningful patterns that arise not by chance, but by a deeper, invisible order. When you are isolated, distractions fall away, and suddenly you notice the signs you once overlooked. A song that answers a question you've been carrying, a book that appears at just the right moment, a stranger's words that echo your innermost thoughts. These are not random events. They are clues, breadcrumbs left by the unconscious, guiding you toward the next step of your journey. In ordinary life, we are too busy, too preoccupied to pay attention. But isolation sharpens your perception. It forces you to slow down, to listen, to trust that even in your aloneness, you are being led. Synchronicity is the universe's way of reminding you that you are not lost. You are exactly where you need to be, even if you can't yet see the full path. Yet for all its purpose, isolation is rarely easy. There comes a point when the weight of this inner work feels unbearable, when the old self is crumbling and the new one has not yet emerged. Jung knew this terrain intimately, his own period of profound isolation, following his break with Freud, plunged him into what he later described as a dark night of the soul. This is the crucible of transformation, the moment when everything you thought you knew about yourself is called into question. It is a spiritual crisis, a confrontation with the void. You may feel abandoned, hopeless, as if you are wandering in a desert with no end in sight. But this, too, has its purpose. The dark night is not punishment, it is initiation. It is the necessary death of what no longer serves you, the breaking apart that makes rebirth possible. Jung himself emerged from this period with the foundations of his greatest work, the concepts of the collective unconscious, archetypes, and the process of individuation. What seemed like collapse was, in truth, the making of him. This is the paradox of isolation. It is only when you are stripped of everything familiar that you discover what has been within you all along. The universe isolates you not to break you, but to remake you. It is a ruthless mercy, a forced reckoning with the truth of who you are and who you are becoming. The ego will resist, clinging to old identities, old comforts. But the soul knows, this solitude is sacred ground. Here, in the quiet, you are meeting yourself for the first time. And that meeting, however difficult, is the beginning of everything. There comes a moment in every profound transformation when the past begins to feel foreign, when the people, places, and routines that once felt like home suddenly leave you strangely hollow. This disconnection isn't accidental. When the universe begins isolating you for growth, one of the first signs is this subtle but unmistakable distancing from aspects of your life that no longer align with your becoming. Relationships that once felt comforting may now drain your energy. Habits that used to provide escape now feel empty. Even career paths or belief systems you've long identified with might suddenly seem ill-fitting. This isn't ingratitude or restlessness, It's your soul's quiet rebellion against anything that would keep you from your true path. The discomfort you feel is actually a sacred signal, the universe whispering that you've outgrown these containers, making space for what's coming next. As the familiar falls away, pay attention to the language of your unconscious, particularly through dreams and symbols. Jung discovered that during periods of intense transformation, the psyche often communicates through powerful recurring images. Water representing the unconscious, snakes symbolizing transformation, or figures like the wise old man or nurturing mother appearing as archetypal guides. You might dream repeatedly of being lost in a labyrinth only to discover a hidden door, or of your teeth falling out, ancient symbols of metamorphosis. In waking life, certain animals, numbers, or synchronicities might appear with uncanny timing. These aren't mere coincidences but coded messages from your deeper self, attempting to guide you through this transitional phase. The more isolated you become from external noise, the louder this symbolic language speaks. Perhaps the most profound sign of purposeful isolation is the gradual shift from seeking answers outside yourself to discovering them within. When external validation sources dry up, when mentors disappear, when friends don't understand your journey, when traditional success formulas stop working, you're being initiated into a deeper wisdom. This is often uncomfortable at first. We're conditioned to seek approval, to follow maps, to want clear signposts. But true transformation demands we develop our own compass. You might notice yourself less interested in others' opinions, more attuned to your own intuition. Decisions come less from should and more from a quiet, unshakable knowing. This is the gift hidden in isolation, the rediscovery of your own authority. The universe isn't abandoning you, it's teaching you to trust the only guide you'll ever truly need, the wisdom that whispers from within. This sacred loneliness creates the perfect conditions for rebirth. Like a caterpillar in its chrysalis, what appears from the outside like solitary confinement is actually the theater of your metamorphosis. The disconnection from old patterns makes space for new ways of being. The symbolic language of dreams and synchronicities provides guidance when conventional maps fail. The withdrawal of external validation forces you to locate your own North Star. These aren't random occurrences but interconnected signs that you're exactly where you need to be, in the sacred in-between space where who you were dissolves so that who you're meant to become can emerge. The isolation feels vast, but it's actually the universe holding space for your becoming. Every ancient hero's journey required a time of withdrawal before the return. This is yours. The alchemy of transformation happens not by resisting this period of isolation, but by engaging with it consciously. One of the most powerful tools at your disposal is journaling, not just as a record of thoughts, but as an active dialogue with your unconscious. Jung developed a technique called active imagination, where you consciously engage with the contents of your psyche through writing, art, or inner dialogue. Set aside time each day to let your hand move freely across the page, giving voice to the different parts of yourself that are emerging. Ask questions of your deeper wisdom and record the responses that arise. Pay special attention to recurring themes, symbols, or emotions that surface. This practice creates a bridge between your conscious mind and the unconscious forces shaping your transformation. Over time, you'll begin to discern patterns and guidance that were previously hidden. The page becomes a sacred space where your highest self can speak without interruption from the outside world. In our hyper-connected world, we've become terrified of silence, treating it like an emptiness to be filled rather than a presence to be received. Yet it's in these quiet moments that the most profound revelations emerge. Practice sitting with the discomfort of solitude without immediately reaching for distractions. Start with just 5 minutes, simply being present with your breath, observing the thoughts and sensations that arise without judgment. You'll likely encounter resistance at first. The ego hates this kind of surrender. But gradually, you'll begin to hear the subtle voice beneath the mental chatter. This is where intuition speaks. This is where creative solutions to long-standing problems spontaneously arise. The silence you've been avoiding is actually the womb of your rebirth. The more you practice resting in this stillness, the more you'll come to recognize it not as loneliness, but as the presence of something far greater than temporary companionship could provide. Perhaps the most challenging yet essential practice is learning to trust the unfolding of this process, even when you can't see the destination. Transformation moves at its own rhythm, and your isolation will last exactly as long as necessary, not one moment more. When the doubts come, and they will, remind yourself that every major growth in nature requires a period of containment. The seed in darkness, the caterpillar in its chrysalis, the winter before spring, all know this truth instinctively. Your work isn't to rush the process, but to show up for it each day with curiosity and courage. Keep a list of small signs of progress to review when faith wavers. Notice how your perspective on past events has already shifted. Observe the subtle ways your values and priorities are reorganizing themselves. These are the fingerprints of transformation at work. The universe didn't isolate you to abandon you. It separated you to rebuild you. And when the time is right, you'll emerge from this cocoon not as who you were, but as who you were always meant to become. This period of isolation is actually a rare gift, an invitation to participate consciously in your own metamorphosis. Through journaling, you mine the gold of your unconscious wisdom. In silence, you learn the language of your soul. And through trust, you align yourself with the intelligence guiding this entire process. What feels like exile is actually sacred incubation. The old life had to fall away because you were meant for more than its limitations. Every moment of discomfort is the breaking of a shell that could no longer contain you. The loneliness isn't permanent. It's the necessary space for your new self to take form. And when you emerge, you'll understand why this time of solitude was the greatest gift you could have received. As we come full circle, remember this: isolation was never your abandonment, it was your redirection. The universe doesn't separate you from what matters. It separates you for what matters. Every moment of solitude, every stretch of silence, every instance where you felt uncomfortably alone was actually the cosmos clearing away the clutter so you could encounter the truth of who you are. Carl Jung's wisdom reminds us that the most profound journeys are taken inward, and sometimes the universe must strip everything else away to ensure we don't miss the path meant for us. What you've labeled as loneliness may well be the very threshold of your becoming. If these words resonate with you, know you're not wandering in the dark alone. Countless others have stood where you stand, disoriented yet on the verge of something extraordinary. Share your story in the comments below. Are you in the midst of your own dark night, grappling with the weight of transformation? Or have you already emerged from the chrysalis, stronger and more aligned than you ever thought possible? Your experience could be the very light someone else needs to keep going. And as you move forward, carry this truth with you. The answers you seek were never outside you. They've always lived within, waiting for the noise to fade so they could finally be heard. The universe didn't isolate you to leave you empty. It emptied you so you could be filled with something far greater, the unshakable knowing of who you truly are. The solitude, the struggle, the silence, they were all leading you here. Now, the real journey begins.